Hey, friends and extended family. I think I'm on my second last day of being sick. And so that means tomorrow or the next day, I think I'll spit in my DNA sample and send that off. And I think I'm going to start a Facebook group for adoptees for the sole purpose of gathering up an angry mob. And of course, I will let all my friends on here know, and of course I'll let all my friends on the forums and chat rooms, and maybe I'll head back over to Pound Puppy Legacy and see how old um, Miss Carrie is doing with her website. Um, the other thing I kind of wanted to mention today is I'm starting to feel like I really have to start defining myself. Um, it seems like this identity politics that's going on in the world is really starting to cramp my adoption journey because, as you know, we're trying to rediscover our hidden cultures and our hidden roots. And that being said, you know, my heritage is of being a Caucasian currently in trying to discover, appreciate, reconnect. Um, well, the rest of the world seems to be wanting to destroy, annihilate, genocide my culture, or at least the liberal mad people, and I assume Islam isn't a huge fan of Caucasian Western culture either, and I do not believe that they have the best intentions for those of us who do not necessarily want to convert to Islam. So the other day on an adoption website, a woman brought up a meme about white saviorism. Now, I know there's tons of idiot white people um, and idiot adoption agencies, well, or greedy, money grubbing adoption agencies that are bringing over a shit ton of um, third world, second world, other first world immigrants, um, immigrant adoptees to adopt and take from their cultures. Now, as far as all that goes, I mean, this may seem redundant, but for new viewers, I'm completely against adoption. So my heart goes out to the poor Koreans coming here, being raised by people who do not look like them, do not share the same culture, do not share the same values, and do not share the same biological evolution, for God's sake. Um, again, when it comes to adoption, people want to deny science and they want to deny God. So, I mean, what are they basing anything on? Feelings? Because I want to feel like it's a nice thing. Well, you turn around and listen to the adoptees, and we'll tell you it's not a nice thing. We don't want it. We don't want to have it. Um, so that being said, yes, all these Koreans coming over here, all these Somalians, Nigeria, like all these people coming from all these different countries all over the world being adopted into homes. God knows what kind of homes they're being adopted into because we're not told. And on top of that, after they had dropped those adoptees off, you never hear from them again, except in the cases occasionally where those adoptive parents murder those children, like the four Asian children, and I think there were 6 or 7 children that looked like they might have been from African descent. And then Russia has shut off the adoption flow because of the numerous cases of Russian adoptees being murdered here. So, all that being said, I'm not racist. I have friends around the world. I probably have enemies around the world. Uh, you know, I don't really care um, what sort of avatar you're sporting, although your avatar does generally give me some sort of idea of where your roots may have brought you from. Your accent may also give me some clue that maybe you weren't born here. Um, it's we don't need to ignore these things. They're just it's reality. It's reality. Okay. I worked in the car industry. Now I can tell you that if I was dealing with an East Indian person or I was dealing with a white person, through time and experience, I've learned to treat them how they'd like to be treated. Right? I've learned to understand maybe their culture a little bit. So for example, I mean, in Western culture, um, we're not so big on the negotiating. Most things have a set price, and that's how we do business. But in the car industry, there still is negotiating. Now, if you go to markets in other countries, this is what they do. They negotiate. That's there's an art. They pride themselves, and if you aren't willing to engage in how they do business, the way they do business, well, you're going to get walked all over. But that being said, I mean, to talk about it amongst white people, they would think you would be racist. And yet, for the most part, when I deal with my East Indian customers or whatnot, they really like me. Um, and in some cases, they've even brought their families down to meet me, which was surprising because I worked at kind of a redneck car dealership when I first started off. So some of my cowboy-looking cohorts were kind of surprised. So all that being said, not racist, but what I am as an adoptee is I have become a nationalist of sorts. It seems to make the most sense for me. Uh, and the reason why that is because a nation is a group of people with common denominators, right? So when you go to interact with another person, well, you don't have to worry about offending their culture. You don't have to worry about not understanding them. You don't have to worry about what language they speak. You don't have to worry about how they do things because you've been trained into your culture. You've been trained into your nation, and you can operate without all these headaches. Because what we're seeing now in the Western culture is this PC culture, which is an absolute nightmare because unfortunately, it is contagious because some people are coming out and feeling oppressed. Fair enough. I also feel oppressed in my life. Absolutely, I do. As an adoptee, I felt oppressed in my um, pretend family. I felt oppressed in my pretend neighborhood. I felt oppressed in my pretend extended family. I felt oppressed in my school. I felt oppressed in my community. And ultimately, I feel oppressed. And now that we're coming to I personally am coming to a place where I'm slowly exiting these places and seeing that where I belong as my natural self. So I've come to the conclusion I don't belong in the adoptive family. That's okay. That's okay. If I was a heart and you put it into some guy and he rejected the heart, that's okay. There's a lot of unseen physiological, spiritual, mental factors that we can't calculate. We as human beings think we are all that in a bag of chips because we've decided we don't need God, we don't need anything spiritual. We've got our science and we've got it bought and paid for by people who enjoy creating their own truth, their manufactured consent truth. So, hopefully that helps you understand. So when I say I'm leaning, see, I personally am not a nationalist because I'm not in my nation. I'm in a place that's treated me like garbage. I feel like I feel almost like I was born as a sort of prisoner of war in a large concentration camp that was more like, now don't get confused here, but there's two sides of the whole concentration camp story in Germany. There's the one side of the story, which is this horrific nightmare hell. And then there's the other side of the story that says some of these prisoners say that it was actually, they had a pool, they had, plays put on, they had community, nights, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't really that bad as put out. So again, I was raised in a place that looked quite nice. Looked like there was a suburb type dwelling. There was trees and things you could play in. But at the same token, during the entire you know childhood, what was happening was I was being I guess being bondaged to tobacco smoke. So we were fumigated with tobacco smoke. And that was almost nationwide. Smoking was nationwide. People fumigating themselves because, well, they'd been duped in a sort of way. Then there was the alcoholism, removing of the spiritual education, removing of the moral education, plopped down in an atheist sort of home with a slant against God or anything God related or spirit related, and cut off from higher learning, I guess, things like psychology and um, philosophy and whatnot. So or encouraged away from it. So, anyways, ultimately, and then on top of everything else, Western culture has the television and the mainstream media, and I think we were really the forerunners in that propaganda indoctrination scheme and brainwashing. And I ultimately, I saw a video, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago or something like that, and a fellow was talking about his brother-in-law that was in the CIA, and the brother-in-law had told him one thing. He'd said, "Never watch the television because it's the most high-tech brainwashing device ever developed." And it is. It absolutely is. It doesn't take much scratching of the surface if you start getting into things like social engineering and other things to really start getting how bad it is, right? It's very difficult to see it. The Truman Show said, you know, we accept the reality with which we are presented. And you know what? It's true. It's true. So for those who went ahead and studied the psychology, Freud, and really cracked, you know, the mental connection with the physiology and how to sort of intervene to take control of that avatar, um, and basically set limits within the mind. Um, they did a bang up job. They did a really bang up job. And, you know, order from chaos, but at what cost? Order from chaos, but at what cost? You know, so the cost of you think you have free will, but do you? You know, how many subliminal messages have been implanted? How many ideas or ideologies have been implanted that are not your own? Because I see it more and more every day, people struggling with their nature, right? So mental health in Canada is, you know, backed up beyond belief. And I've been I went knocked on their door, mental health, and said, you know, I'm struggling a little bit with reality because it seems to be a little bit upside down right now. At least from what you people are telling me. It seems fairly cut and dry to me. I don't feel like I'm insane, but I do feel like I am surrounded by psychos, narcissists, and sociopaths in high numbers. And it feels as though that is by design because I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I really don't. Um, so back to what we were talking about. So although I cannot, because I'm not connected to my culture, people, blah, 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 I'm outside. I'm outside of the human condition. But in reading along of your history, your human history, in you know, delving into the religions and delving into the politics and the philosophies, the art of war, these sort of things, and looking at what's going on in the world and looking at my own plethora of experiences, I can say I can say that I have a fairly at the end of the day I don't know shit. It's true. I don't know shit. But at the end of the day I'm well aware of how much I don't know, and when I speak to people who seem to feel like they know everything, I'm well aware that how much I don't know is the tip that I'm ahead of these people because they think they do know based on what their television has told them and the powers that be have told them. You know, more education in the Western culture does not make you necessarily smarter, especially if you have been getting the mainstream education. Uh, the truth is out there, as Fox Mulder used to like to say from the good old X Files. But you got to dig. You have to dig, and you have to start establishing some truths that you can feel deep down to your bone. And these truths need to be true on the physical plane, true on the mental plane, and then true on the spiritual plane. That's what connects all the dimensions. Truth. Because truth is truth is truth is truth. The subjective truth that people are all talking about, well, they don't, you know, they're arguing over facts and figures, which are static, constantly changing. Um, But when you get into things like statistics and whatnot, they don't lie. So, and there's observable truths. So, anyways, that being said, I think the nations should get back to their roots, reinvest in their cultures, and we should work together as nations. I would have no problem going over to Saudi Arabia and debriefing them on Canadian problems. Right? They hate us right now. Um, maybe not us. Justin Trudeau, yeah, and our insane libtard government right now that is just mentally ill and destroying our country as quickly as they can. And not only that, they just seem to be pilfering the coffers. I think I used the right vocabulary there, but again, sick. So, but anyway, so when I talk about nationalism, what's wrong with that? I mean, if I go to Japan, should I expect to be, run through the streets and lynched and hung and all these sort of things? No, because nationalism isn't really racism. It's a love of your own nation and your own homogenous people. So I mean, I want Japan to be there, and I'd like to go and visit them one day. They seem like a very incredibly interesting people with a rich history and culture. Same goes for China. Same goes for Africa. I was talking to my friend from Nigeria today about legalization of weed here, and he's like, "Oh, we have weed." I don't see myself, you know, ordering in bales of weed from Nigeria to start a business, but either which way, well, especially with Nigeria, anyways, because, well, let's face it, Nigeria as a whole does not have the best reputation for their business practices. With their emails and whatnot going on over there. But I mean, this guy's a really nice guy and he seems good, but I can't see myself getting involved in an import export business. But all those things being said, um, you can't turn around and blame white people for everything. I'm sorry, there's tons of white people I despise, but you know what? I'm a really awesome white person, so you know I don't care if you're fat, skinny, ugly, whatever. We can all be friends. We can all chit chat. We can all exchange ideas, and we can all work together in a positive manner to create and to move forward. But currently, what we have is this sort of everybody tearing each other down and looking to point fingers and blame, and nobody wanting to take responsibility for themselves. Um, and we have a lot of corruption for sure. And I mean, I'd love to say like, well, down with Western culture because of our corruption, but take a look around, man. It's everywhere. It's all over. We're in big trouble. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm simply gonna form a group of adoptees working together for our own interests to then turn around and just hammer the corruption that creates more adoptees in pain, because we already have our pain. We're not trying to tell you how horrible adoption is, so you quit causing us pain. We've already got the full share, the full load. We're trying to tell you, and we're shouting so you'll listen, so you quit hurting your own goddamn children. Because that's what you're doing. You're damning your children to our life of pain. Now, don't get me wrong. The life of pain has merit. To go without love, to go without family, to go without culture, to go without all these things. Wow. You know, I really look at those who have those things as their God-given rights and have no clue of their value. You know, No clue. I would love to sit in a courtroom in front of the judges who've decided they know me and they know where I should go and how I should be, and you know, and I would love to say to them, "Sir, I am going to give you a better life," and then proceed to remove him from his family for 18 years, no contact, and see how that plays out for them. Of course, he would have to be put in the exact same circumstances as, the worst of the worst of adoptees have gotten. But I think we'd see some big reforms immediately following the revelation. Anyways, I'm not happy with ignorant people. Not at all. So, look forward in the next week or so here. I'm going to try and get these things put together, and then we will figure it out. I know there's some much smarter and sharper tools in the shed than I out there in our adoption community, and I think we can all find our way to conspiring and figuring out a way to help the future us. Anyways, I think that's about all I got today, but the other one was the other thing I'm seeing here is there's these Save Our Sisters and these adoption groups that are all women, and some of the adoption groups the other day, me and another fella had commented that one of the posts seemed quite racist against white people, and I know you can turn around and say that only white people can be racist, but that's fucking ridiculous. Anyways, she turned around and said, "Oh, it's two men. Look, it's two guys saying that, two men saying that." Really? So if we go back through time and erase all the knowledge that has been put forth by men, what exactly would we be left with? No, don't get me wrong here. I know that there's tons and tons of women who have contributed in huge, huge manners. I also know there's tons and tons of women who are probably the genius behind the man. Sure, absolutely. And I know there's probably some of these great men, throughout history that couldn't have managed to, get out of bed, make themselves breakfast, and wipe their ass without a wife to get them rolling. I get it. I love women. But there are some very, very horrible women out there. And there's some very, very horrible men. Okay? But when we speak, or we're debating or talking, you cannot utilize the fact that there's horrible women and men as an argument that you don't need to listen to me. I mean, you don't need to listen to me, but that you don't need to respect my opinion if we're talking and exchanging ideas because of my penis. That's fucking ridiculous, you idiots. So please take this to heart, and when you see these type of people, call them out. Call them out on their bullshit. Whether they're racist towards whites, whether they're racist towards men, whether they're racist towards anyone, or hateful or bigoted, blah blah blah. But I'm getting pretty sick and tired of these racist bigots running around calling us racist bigots because we're talking about creating a better world. if we can, and trying to, figure out, okay, well, we got some flaws over here, some flaws over there, blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, you got to talk critically once in a while. And guess what? Black people aren't perfect. Chinese people aren't perfect. Japanese people aren't perfect. White people aren't perfect. Nobody's fucking perfect. Great. But the point being is, I I am much, much more likely to listen to someone who says, well, I've got some problems, I've got ADD, whatever it may be, and I'm working through those, but I also, am able to contribute in these sort of manners, or whatever it may be. So think of that as a country, or your political leaders. Really, like, this whole Trump, Hillary Clinton bullshit thing. I mean, don't get me started with Hillary Clinton, because I just feel the evil oozing off that woman, just pure evil. I mean, I think she ate her husband's soul. If you look at the poor Bill Clinton now, he looks like a Walking Dead cast member. But the point being is, you had an American election there, and the same goes in Canada, and you're literally voting for people because you have to try to stop the one you hate more from getting in there. Nobody's voting for positive qualities anymore. They're voting for who has the less negative qualities in their opinion. I'm scared. I'm scared. The world has gone. So, anyways, let's start with adoptees getting together, figuring out what our positives are, figuring out what all our negatives are, our commonalities. Let's unwind ourselves. Let's make ourselves, we don't have to make ourselves. Let's be the better people, the bigger people that we have been for most of our lives. Or else, if it keeps going the way it's going, we're just going to see more and more of us going mad and shooting up the place, right? Because that should be the sign that you're really hurting some people when they turn around and start murdering. So, anyways, I think we can avoid that. I think we're smart enough. And I think it's time, and I think people are maybe ready to hear what we have to say. No, they're not going to like it, but they're going to hear it.